All right, guys, let's learn how to calculate R using Excel. I want to do it in two ways, sort of a manual way and then using the function in Excel to do the calculation, which is much faster, admittedly. But I think it's useful to learn how to make Excel do the things you want it to do, and it's not too hard to do it that way. Plus, it teaches you the formula, so I want you to kind of know the formula as well. All right, so let's get into it. So I have my data here. We're looking again at this data, which is related to hours spent studying and the score earned on a final exam. Last time we calculated a simple scatter plot. I don't need that anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that from my document. All right, now here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a few columns. What we're going to need to do is to have a column where I square all the x values. So I'm going to call that the x times x column. And then I'm going to want a column where I multiply the x's and the y's together. So I'm going to have that the x times y column. And then lastly, I'm going to create a column which is y times y, and I'm sure you can guess that that means I'm going to take the y values and multiply them by themselves. I'm going to let Excel do this really fast. I'm going to say equals in this cell, and I'm going to say take the x value and multiply, so I'll hit the times button, and then itself. So I click it again, and now I have the answer. 12 times 12, of course, is 144. And now I have the x times y position, same thing. I'll do equals x times, and I'll click the cell next to it for y, and now I have the product of these two values, 12 times 97. And then lastly, I'm going to square the y, same way, equals, and y times y. And what that does for us is it does the first row of computation, and to do all the others, I will just click and drag, and scroll all the way down to the bottom. Done. And do it again. Done. And then do it again. Done. And then from here, I'm going to want to sum all these columns. So I'm going to say equals and type the word sum. And then click and drag all the values above that I want to add, press enter, and I have my sum. And then if I want to sum all the other columns, I just scroll over, dragging this function over, and it will do the sum for all the columns. I'm going to label these. This is the sum of x, right? So I'll say sum of x, right? This is the sum of y. I'm just putting little labels. You could type it out in words or even import symbols, whatever you want to do. This I'm going to call the sum of x squared. So I'll just say xx. And this is the sum of xy, right? And then this one is going to be the sum of y or y squared. Okay, very good. So I have all those sums and they're labeled. I can even, highlight them if I want to, make them look nice and colorful. That way I know what they are, right? All right, so there we go. We have our sums labeled. All right, last thing I want to do then is to, perform the calculation for R the manual way. And I say manual even though Excel is doing most of the work. It's still manual because I'm going to do the work of typing in the formula as a function. So I'm going to say R equals, just a little notation, and then I have to come up with the formula. Now, in order to do this, I'm going to need to get some sum of square values first. So I'm going to put this on hold for a minute and go get all those sum of square values. In order to do the sum of square values, though, I need to know what the formulas are. So let's take a look in the notes. So you'll see the formulas. They're pretty intuitive. Once you've seen one, you've kind of seen all of them. So I'm going to look at this one here, right? And so what it's doing is it's the sum of squares for x, y. And what it's going to do then is it's going to take the sum of x times y. See, the notation is helpful here. It has that little xy. That's telling you you're going to take the sum for the product xy all the way down, right? So you get the full sum, and you subtract from it the sum of the x column times the sum of the y column, and then divide by how many values you started with. So in this data set, there were 29 ordered pairs. You can see this from the Excel spreadsheet. It ends here at 30, but you can see that there's a title, so it's one less than that, it's 29. You can see the count here in the corner says 29. Okay, so the 29 values, so we know what n is. In fact, I'm just going to say down here, n is 29. So I'll put a little cell next to it with the value 29 in it, so I have it. Okay, very good. Let's get these sum of square values and see how they're done. So remember, the sum of square for And I guess I can put these anywhere. So I guess I'll put my sum of squares over here. So I'm going to put sum of square xy here. It always wants to give me a lowercase s there. I'm not really sure why. And then if I want to get the sum of square for xx, I'll do that. And then lastly, the sum of square for yy. Okay, so here's where I'm going to put the formulas. So remember the pattern. It was the sum of x times y, that's this value, minus the sum of the x value, which is this, times the sum of the y value, which is right next door to it, divided by the number of ordered pairs, which was 29 here. And that is the sum of square for xy. Again, the pattern is it's the thing squared, sort of, xx in this case. So it'll be, for the next formula, the same approach. It's the sum of x squared, so that's this guy, minus the sum of x times itself. And then again, divided by 29, the number of ordered pairs. And for the yy pattern, let's get that one. Oh, I realized that it converted my SS to lowercase for some reason. I don't know why Excel wants to do that. Anyways, let's go back to here. Equals to, for the yy, I need the sum of yy, that value, minus the sum of y times itself, divided by 29. Again, 29 is the number of ordered pairs. All right, so here are your values. And then finally, to calculate r, the formula says that it's the sum of squares for the mixed term xy divided by the square root of these other two terms multiplied. I'll show you what that looks like, but if you want to remember the formula, it's right here. It's the sum of squares for the mixed term xy divided by the square root of the product of the other two. All right, so let's plug those in then into Excel. So my formula will be equal to a fraction here. So I'm going to do this value divided by the square root. Right here, I'll put the square root function. And in the square root position, I'll do this guy times the value underneath it. Close that up and press enter. And so there's my r. So I've just created, or recreated, I guess, the function in Excel that you could get, again, admittedly with a push of a few buttons, right? But I wanted to show you how the formula works and how you can do it pretty easy if Excel is doing all the calculations for you. And again, I've already worked this out for you so you can see the answer is 0.921.